Today, I'm honored to have Jodi Picoult in my podcast, an American author of 29 novels with over 40 million copies sold worldwide, translated into 34 languages, Portuguese included. So, Jodi is known for writing emotionally charged and morally complex novels that often center on family dynamics, legal and ethical dilemmas, and social justice issues. She studied creative writing at Princeton University, earned a master's in education from Harvard, wrote her first story at age 5. That's so sweet. The Lobster Witch Misunderstood. Co-authored young adult novels with her daughter, Samantha Van Leer, Between the Lines and Off the Page, plus short stories, novellas, and even a stint writing for Wonder Woman comics. Her books have been banned in several U.S. school districts for tackling controversial topics. She's known for meticulous research, often interviewing experts to portray opposing viewpoints fairly, and describes writing as being paid to hear voices in her head. Welcome, Jodi. Thank you for attending my podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Is this true? The voice is in your head.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it feels like. It just feels like you're some kind of psychic and you're channeling, the voices of your characters. So, yeah, I think there is a very fine line between creativity and madness.
You make it sound so easy, but it's not for sure. So even your most recent release, and we have plenty of your books in Portugal, by any other name, Na Sombra do Teu Nome. I also brought for this video the Portuguese edition, of course.
Yes, beautiful.
It is, which explores Shakespearean authorship through a feminist lens. And this one had, of course, absolutely a meticulous research. You've researched a lot, you've studied a lot for this.
Yeah, I did. I spent a ton of time doing all kinds of interviews with scholars, reading primary source documents, trying to learn everything that I could in order to make sure that whatever I was presenting fictionally also happened factually, you know?
Yeah, and you tell that in the end of the book, you explain very well what you did.
Yes.
And we throughout the book we understand. So first of all, actually, congratulations. I loved it. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
And I recommend to all my listeners, you talk to me about this.
Yeah. So it's basically a book about how women have been written out of history by the men who've been writing history and how that was happening 400 years ago and is still happening today. Excuse me. It follows two different women. The first is actually a real live historical figure. Well, she's dead now, but she did live. Her name was Amelia Bassano, and she was an Elizabethan playwright who couldn't be an Elizabethan playwright because back then women were not allowed to have anything written that could be performed on the stage. And so I theorized that she paid a man for the use of his name in order to get her plays seen. And that man's name happened to be William Shakespeare. And then it's about her very fictional descendant, a woman named Melina Green, who is now a writer, a playwright working for hopefully towards Broadway, who writes a play based on her ancestor Amelia's coming of age and cannot get any traction in the Broadway community because that is still a very male-dominated world. And so the question is whether she too is going to write herself out of history, basically, in order to get her words up on a stage. And I think what I love the most about this book is that it's a lot of things at once. It's a page turner, it's historical fiction, it is about a time period, a very, very long time ago. But it is the timeliest book that I've ever written because, right now I'm living in a country where the rights of women are literally being stripped away daily. And it's not history if it's still happening.
Exactly. That's so scary.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is the 16th century, and throughout the book, I loved Emilia. First of all, it's my favorite. She's my, of course, I think that's
Yeah.
obvious, right? My favorite
Yeah.
character, and I was so glad at the same time that I'm on the 21st century. But,
Right.
but then again, yeah, we still have a lot to progress,
Yeah. We have a lot of work to do. No question.
really. And so, I have to tell you, after reading your book, I read several other novels, and when the author has some quotes on the first page of the book, and recently I read a book that had a Shakespeare quote, and I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Not him. Well, it's funny. That's kind of how I came to the story because, I was an English major and I fell in love with Shakespeare as an English major, right? He was creating, or so I thought, these female characters that were so three-dimensional, like Beatrice and Portia and Rosalind and Kate. Nobody else was doing it. And way, way, way back in the 80s when I went to university, there was still a question about Shakespeare's authorship, but it was very quickly glossed over. And I didn't think about it for years until I read an article by a woman named Elizabeth Winkler in The Atlantic, and she was talking about the authorship question, and she mentioned that Shakespeare had two daughters that survived infancy, but he taught neither of them to read or write. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait a second here. There is just no way a guy who created those incredible three-dimensional egalitarian female characters would not have taught his own girls how to read or write. I just didn't
Exactly.
buy it. And she posed the name Amelia Bassano as an authorship candidate, and I'd never heard of her. I mean, I'd heard of Francis Bacon, and I've heard of the Earl of Oxford and Christopher Marlowe. Many, many men have been suggested as potential authors of the Shakespearean plays, but I'd never heard Amelia's name. And the more I dove into her story, the more I realized that all of these gaps and weirdnesses in Shakespeare's life that people have struggled to make sense of for years were seamlessly filled by Amelia's life.
Yeah, and she was the first poet ever published, the women's poet.
Yes. hmm
Exactly.
She
So
was in 1611. She was the first published female poet in England ever. I mean, honestly, we should all know her name for that reason alone.
exactly.
Nobody knows who she is.
No.
But you don't get a book of poetry published in your mid 40s when you've come out of nowhere as a woman. That just didn't happen back then, which is another reason that I think she was writing before that and using somebody else's name.
Yeah, and it was great. It makes totally sense, but you had to think it through how you would do that because we have Emilia, but then also Melina Green, she's from the present day, and she's you. She's your arguments are hers,
Yeah,
and this
yeah,
the skeptical guy, let's call it like Jasper Toll,
yeah,
he's a lot of men nowadays.
yeah. He is. He's not enough men, I don't think, because he does change. But the interesting thing for me about writing this book is it is probably the most personal book I've ever written. Because often I write about characters who have tons of trauma and hardship in their life, but they're not me. I haven't gone through those things myself. But everything that Melina goes through is something that I literally went through because in addition to writing novels, I also write librettos for Broadway musicals. And the very first adaptation of a show that I did was an adaptation of the book that I wrote with my daughter, the young adult novel called Between the Lines, which was a girl's coming of age story. And everything Melina is told in this book, I was told to my face. It's too small. It's too emotional. Nobody wants to see a girl's coming of age on Broadway when literally there were two boys coming of age stories playing next door to each other on Broadway at the same time. And that was just so frustrating to me, particularly when you find out that 80% of tickets on Broadway are purchased by women. So where is that disconnect? And the answer is in the theater owners. There are about five or six old white men who basically own all the theaters in New York. And ultimately, the decision of what goes in is theirs. And they tend to pick stories that reflect their own lives, when in reality, there are audiences of brown people, black people, queer people, people with disabilities, women who want to see their own experiences reflected on a stage. And we're not seeing that happen yet.
Exactly. And I think you have it all covered. You have her best friend, Andre.
Andre, yeah.
You said something, it's a great point. Jasper Toll, he eventually changes.
Yeah,
I,
he does. But yeah, a lot of men haven't yet.
yeah. Do you have a lot of books that were censored in the
Yes.
past? What about this one? What about the critiques? Have you, is, of course, it's,
This book has not been banned yet that I know of in this country, but I currently have the most banned book in America. 19 Minutes is the most banned book in America right now, and it's a book I wrote about school shootings back in 2017. It is
Wow.
not banned because of guns or because of violence. It is banned because of a single page that shows a date rape.
Okay. And it's
And
still
that
banned.
is considered mature content, and that is what certain parents have objected to. And because of very poorly worded laws about um, parents objecting to content that allows one parent to make a decision for all parents, they pull the books off the shelves.
Yeah. We
It's not
also,
great in America right now.
yeah, not neither in Portugal. We're going back in a few, sexual education in schools are there are talks about being banned.
Right,
So why?
right,
Why now? Why again?
right. Yeah, well, don't get me started on my country.
Okay. Let's move forward. So, I recommend Na Sombra do Teu Nome, both covers are beautiful, actually. I'm showing this on YouTube for those who want to watch the video. So let's get to know you as a reader. So
Sure.
libraries were a part of your childhood, as your first job was as a page in a library, uh, a page is the one who shelves the books when they come in.
Yes,
So sometimes
exactly.
it was slow and you could read. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I always say it was a self-fulfilling prophecy because I think it's
Exactly.
very funny that my first job was as a page. Yeah, but I mean, libraries were really important to me when I was growing up. My mom used to take me twice a week. She was a huge reader. She modeled reading for me. And I remember so distinctly when I could sign my name because that was when I was allowed to get my own library card.
Wow, you felt like a grown-up.
Yeah, I was three. I was
Oh,
reading when I was three. Yeah.
you were 2 years away of writing your first book.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. It was a very cute little picture book, The Lobster that was misunderstood, and my mom still has it somewhere.
Ah, you have to edit it and publish it.
Ah, maybe not.
So, as of today, with ch three children, 29 books, book tours, writing the 30th, perhaps, when are you able to read?
I usually read at night, right before I go to sleep. Like that's how I unwind. I do a lot of endorsing. I try really hard to lift up authors who were at the beginning of their career because I remember how important that was to me. I don't have a lot of time to do blurbs, but I do more than I think any other author I know. And so I spend a lot of time reading books that none of you can read yet because they haven't been published yet. But yeah, I do read before I go to sleep at night.
Yeah, I've seen your page, your name in
Yes,
your
you probably see
blur.
my blurbs all over. Yeah.
Exactly. So on your book, in your original one, you have Kristen Hanna saying
Yeah.
brilliant and unforgettable. And also Chris Whitaker, a timeless classic. Chris Whitaker from the All the Colors of the Dark, and
Yeah.
Kristen Hanna, the Nightingale, and so many others. And Jojo Moyes, she was also on this podcast,
Yeah.
and she says gripping and heartrending.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree.
JoJo's a sweetheart. She's a friend of mine.
Yeah, I love her,
Yeah.
and she's all praises and for great authors, so which is great for you. So now the books you loved reading, I have to check to make some research, and
Hmm.
I chose some books you loved that we have translated into Portuguese.
Oh, okay.
So first one by Angie Kim, Happiness Falls in Portuguese, o Quociente de Felicidade.
Yes.
Do you remember it? You said I have all your blurbs.
Yeah, good. You might have to remind me of the plots of some of them. But yeah, Angie is a great author, and I do remember really enjoying that book.
It's when Mia she dismisses their absence. Her father and her younger brother don't return
Yes.
home
And
from a
she
walk. Yeah,
Yes, and it's the brother who has a disability and all the
exactly.
it's kind of like it was a great exploration um of of what it means to be in a family, but it was also a great page turner. So I kind of love books that are hybrids like that.
Yeah, and you read it, according to you, you read it in a single day.
I'm sure I did. Yeah.
So this author, Angie Kim, she was born in Seoul, South Korea, and she
Mhm.
moved to Baltimore as a preteen. And I love what I read about her. It says, before becoming a novelist, she worked as a trial attorney, management consultant, dot-com entrepreneur, and stay-at-home mom. So writing is her fifth career.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a lovely person. I don't always get to meet the authors whose books that I blurb, but I have met her. She actually on my tour for By Any Other Name, she moderated one of the events and we had a great time.
Oh, great. So, Quociente de Felicidade, happiness falls. She started writing. This is always hopeful for those who are writers want to be. So she started writing in her 40s. She was inspired by her children's rare medical conditions and her own immigrant experience. And her husband suggested that she try fiction instead of personal essays to protect their kids' privacy.
Mm.
And that changed everything. She said give fiction is like a gift that allowed her to channel all her life experiences into something creative and cathartic.
Yeah.
So happiness falls. Another book you loved, and we have it in Portuguese, Amanhã, Esta, Hora. This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Emma, she's an incredible writer. And that was such an interesting book because it's a little bit of a time travel
It
book,
is.
but
It
it's
is.
not fantasy. It's very grounded in reality. She's just she's a very beautiful wordsmith as well. And Emma runs a bookstore now in New York. Books are magic, which is awesome because, that's another way that authors can give back to their own community. And she's such a supportive colleague because she's always lifting up other authors too.
You always do that also on your Instagram page. You always praise and recommend other authors.
Yeah.
That's great. You're not competition. You're one plus.
No, it's like if people are reading, it's good for all of us, right? And I know
Exactly.
I get tons of recommendations by listening to other authors too. So if I'm looking for a good book, I'm going to go to an author who I trust.
Exactly. So this time tomorrow, you said, I just finished and I'm crying at its message and its honesty and its utter beauty. And now I have to go call my mom. That's what you said.
Yeah.
That was lovely because this is Alice that she's happy enough with her life, but she's taking care of her ailing father. And then what should have been her 40th birthday, she wakes up at her 16-year-old self.
Hmm. Right.
So another recommendation. Another one you chose, you praised. Uma História Fora de Tempo. Faye, Faraway by Helen Fisher. Do you remember?
I don't remember that one.
It's also time travel.
Yeah.
And actually, this time tomorrow, she reconnects, she goes back and sees her father. And
Right.
this one is about her mother. She's a devoted mother who unexpectedly finds herself in the past before her mother's death.
Yes, I vaguely remember it. That was a long time ago, though.
I
I've learned that a long time ago.
it was I found out dozens of books you loved, and I had
Yeah.
to make a shortcut. So another one you chose. This one is not in Portugal, but I think it will be because it was a Reese Witherspoon book club choice. Isola by Allegra Goodman.
Yes. That was a really, really cool book. It is based on a real story.
It is.
So it's historical fiction and it was set like almost the same time really as By Any Other Name. But it's about basically a woman who's stranded on an island. And it was really unlike anything I've ever read. Just a very, very interesting fictional exploration of a real life sort of disaster.
Yeah, and she's in 16th century, as you said. So Marguerite de la Roque, she has an inheritance, and the guy
Yes.
that takes care of her steals her money and sends her
Yeah,
to that deserted island.
right. Yeah, it's brutal. It was a very brutal book, but also, very much about like just I think like self-actualization and how we wind up surprising ourselves with our abilities to do things we never thought we could.
Yeah. You know, this author, she was born in Brooklyn, in New York, and raised in Hawaii. Allegra Goodman, her first novel was at age 7.
Oh, wow.
That reminded me of you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she also went to Harvard, same as you.
Mm.
So other books oh, and I have to go back because there's something you mentioned Emma Straub. She has a
Books are
book.
magic. Yeah.
Yeah. So she once said in an interview, of course, but she said she opened her bookstore because she needed a place to take her kids at 9 a.m. that wasn't a playground or a cafe.
That's funny. Well, she lives in the city, so I understand that. I live in the country. My kids could run around outside when I needed them to.
Yeah, it's different, of course. So other books I chose, I figured out you love. I found out you loved. You said your probably your most favorite class. You have two favorite classics, maybe among others, of course, but the one that made you realize you wanted to be a writer at the age of
Mhm.
12 was Gone with the Wind.
Yes. Gone with the Wind was it's a really interesting book for me to revisit now because I recognize there's a lot about that book that is, I think, racially problematic. But when I was 12 years old and I read that book, it was probably the biggest book I'd ever read. And what I remember was how I felt like I was in the middle of a war zone. I was in a place in the deep South I'd never been. I could smell, gunpowder and I could see bodies laid out. It was so visual. Margaret Mitchell's writing was so visual that I remember distinctly thinking to myself, well, I could do this. So it's really the very first moment that I thought maybe I could be a writer one day.
Wow. Also in your By Any Other Name, I saw it also.
Mm.
I saw the story. And
Yeah,
I
you can taste it. It's
yeah.
got the richness of detail. I know exactly what you mean because it's interesting you say that, but in writing by any other name, I was going so far back to write about Elizabethan times and to create that world for you so that you could see it and feel it and taste it and smell it. I think it's as close to writing fantasy as I've ever gotten because you really had to build the world.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I was going to add that, but he said so. I smelled it. You know,
Yeah, you can.
I smelled her husband, Amelia's husband, breath.
When he's drinking, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when he gets
Hmm.
home, and I and
Yeah,
I and I saw his dirty clothes and the
yeah.
sheets and
Yeah. And the
yeah,
refuse in the streets and, everything just being a little bit dirty. It's just, you can totally imagine what it was like.
yeah, you do definitely. So another classic that you said it was one of your favorites was Pride and Prejudice, of course.
Of course. I mean, the original rom-com. I actually love talking about Pride and Prejudice because, we love the trope of Pride and Prejudice. We love the fact that there's this headstrong girl who doesn't stop to maybe take measure of the fact that her first impression is a bad one. And then we have the emotionally unavailable guy who we probably should never fall for, but we all do. I mean, we've seen this repeated over and over and over again since Austen's time. The reason I particularly love Pride and Prejudice right now is because one of the theater projects that I'm working on is an adaptation of a book by a woman named Shannon Hale called Austenland. And it was also a movie, which was a very funny movie. It's a comedy. And it's about kind of like imagine a Disneyland for people who love Pride and Prejudice. So you get to go for 2 or 3 weeks and live out your Regency dreams, and that's what this whole show is about. And it has been just a delight to write. It's been so funny.
Okay, so where can we see the show? Only it's going to air.
Well, we just
Yeah.
did a concert version in the West End, in England, and we are awaiting a theater. So hopefully you'll be able to see it there soon, and who knows, maybe it will come to Portugal one day.
Yeah, who knows? Okay. So I have recommendations for you, but before that, can once it was uh I came up with these books on my research.
Yeah.
Is there any recent read that you already published, not blurb time,
Yes.
that you recommend?
Um, yes. There is, I will tell you that this book's been out for a while. This was the book that I read during COVID that just blew my mind. There are a few books in my life that I wish I'd written, and this is one of them. And it was by V.E. Schwab, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue.
Ah,
I bet you guys
yeah.
have it there, yeah?
Yes, we do. It's
Um,
translated. Yeah.
yeah, it's just an incredible book, and it's really about how we leave our mark on the world as artists, uh, and how we make sure that we're not forgotten. And just, she's a beautiful craftsman, incredible writer, and I'm wickedly jealous that I didn't think of writing it first.
Well, for what it's worth, I read it. I loved it,
Yeah.
and I preferred yours.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
So yeah, V. Schwab, A Vida Invisível de Adi LaRue. We have it translated. So I know you have a short time left, so I'll recommend you readings. I know you barely have time for more, but probably you've read a lot of these. But especially after well, actually after reading you and after studying the ones you love, there are recommendations that I think you will enjoy. So I think this one you loved. You read Lessons in Chemistry.
Of course.
Of
Yes.
course,
Great
yeah,
book.
sure. So, Educated by Tara
Great
Westover.
book. Tara Westover. Great book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are obvious because of your books, The Time Traveler's Wife,
Oh, yeah.
of
Yeah.
course.
Another great one.
Of course, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell.
Okay, but can I tell you something about Hamnet?
You haven't
So
read
I
it?
loved that book.
Yeah.
But on the very first page, Agnes, who is Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife, that's her character, is out hunting with a falcon. And that is wrong. She would never have been allowed to use a falcon because birds of prey back then were regulated. So only someone at the very highest rank would have been allowed to use a falcon, such as, for example, the Lord Chamberlain, Lord Hunsdon, who is the man that Amelia becomes the mistress of for 10
Yeah,
years
for
in by
10
any other
years.
name. So, I mean, I read it and I was like, oh man, Maggie, you should have done your research.
Because he said when Emilia goes to the guy that has the falcon, he explains
Yes.
that.
And he's
Okay.
allowed to have a falcon. He's basically, Queen Elizabeth's right-hand man.
Okay, that's unfair again.
There you go.
Okay, so other recommendations. So I told you, Lessons in Chemistry, Time Traveler's Wife, Educated. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine.
Yeah, I did read that book. That was a great book.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you read them all, but I got right the hundred
Yeah,
you would
very
love it.
you've got my bookshelves down. Yeah.
Okay, so another one, and actually I just read it on this vacation, and it was Isabella Allende. She came to this
Mhm.
podcast and she recommended, and I love it's not yet in Portuguese, but I think it will be soon. It's from the author of O Rapaz de Pijamas Riscas, the boy in striped pajama, John Boyne, The
Mhm.
Heart Invisible Furies. Have you read this one?
I have not read that one.
Aha! You have to read this one.
Okay. Okay. All right. I will
Okay.
put that on my list. Yeah.
It's about a man being gay in the 50s in Ireland,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and it's a
Mm,
coming of age actually,
yeah.
and it has a lot to do with this author's story. And he's a great writer, and it's an author, a male author. He
Yeah.
writes a lot. He's the stripe. I don't remember the name in
Yeah, the boy
English.
in the striped pajamas. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the same author. So
Cool.
cool.
I
Uh,
will look for it. Okay.
okay, a book you haven't read. I will give it to you if you were here with me.
I wish I were. Yeah.
So, Jodi Picoult, it was such a privilege having you on my podcast, and I recommend The Sombra do Teu Nome, your latest, all your books, but this one is the latest that arrived in Portugal. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ariana. So nice to meet you.
Thank you.